this
lovely to be hanging out with you.
This is a dream come true for me. This is genuinely, I love this part of the world, and to get to interview you in my favorite part of the world is kind of about as good as it gets. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
My pleasure. Lovely to hang out with you.
You are one of the most intelligent and prolific women I know and have had the pleasure to meet. You've written 20 books on feminism.
Well, no, I've written 24, 25 books, but many of them are not about feminism.
Yes.
All of them are secretly feminist, and some of them are overtly feminist, I would say.
That makes sense.
Yes.
What drives you to write so prolifically?
I successfully avoided husbands and children and day jobs. Those things can all really interfere with your productivity.
Amazing. And I'm always fascinated by, I find if I have anything to write, I procrastinate magnificently. Do you have a rigorous writing schedule whereby you write between this hour and you need this very specific thing, and is there a routine that kind of helps you get so much done?
I get up every morning and have tea with milk on an octagonal tray I bought at a thrift store many years ago. And like that has to happen fairly early, and then the rest of it is kind of a muddle and a blur. And I often feel like the most distracted, disorganized person ever. But books do issue forth regularly, which makes me think, like, if I'm this disorganized, what's everybody else doing? And but, you know, I really wanted to be a writer. I loved books, and writing was like one way, even more than reading, to be with books, in books, about books. And so when I learned how to read, I just decided I was going to write books, and which is a very easy decision until you actually have to do it, but somehow one thing led to another.
In your bio, you cite that you're a product of the California public school system from kindergarten to graduate school. How did that shape you? Why did you want to mention it? And
it was actually very funny. I was on a panel with two men just up the road in Monterey about 10 years ago, and they both dropped their Ivy League universities. And I was like, you're older than me. We don't name drop our university out here. And then I was like, that's what an Ivy League education is for, apparently. And I was like, well, you know, can I say bad words on this?
Yes, I think so.
I was like, well, fuck it. If they're going to name drop, you know, the Ivy Leagues, I'm going to name drop public education in California.
Yes!
You know, and
that's so cool.
I sometimes worry that someday we'll say, like, well, we should defund that because it produced her. But, you know, but I just realized, like, we have, you know, we got to name drop these things.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
I love that you did that so incredibly specifically. Was there one specific moment or a series of moments that led up to you knowing that you wanted to be a writer?
I wanted to be a ballerina, and then I learned how to read, which apparently happened very rapidly in first grade. My mom says the first week. And then I thought I wanted to be a librarian because they are with books all day, and what could be lovelier than that? Until I realized that somebody wrote all those books. And books for me, they're like, you know, it's like a magic box. Until you can read them, you can open it, but you can't actually see what's inside or do anything with what's inside. So just that act of learning how to read led pretty quickly to my third and final career decision, which I stuck with.
It's amazing.
So,
so
know,
from a very
as I
young
said,
age,
it's very easy to decide to do something. Actually do it is a whole other thing. And it must have been like that with you deciding to be an actress, and then you had to act.
It didn't happen fast. Yes, it certainly did. I mean, it kind of came out of nowhere, to be honest. It was actually poems and poetry that really got me, and I was also on the debating team because I was really nerdy like that. That was sort of what got me into it. But this feels like it must be a calling for you. I mean, you've truly dedicated your life to doing this, and I love that sometimes I email you and I get an out of office kind of. In order to get anything done, I cannot respond to emails, and I just love that you kind of create that.
I try.
Yeah, you create
but
quiet,
the really nice
safe
people
space
listen to those things, and the less nice people continue to chase you around.
Really?
As you know.
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting thing that nobody calls you up, nobody emails you desperately, urgently urging you to do the work most central to your life and your vision and yourself. Everybody wants you to do something other than that. And some of it's noble causes, and some of it's favors for deserving friends, and some of it, you know, and I believe in service and support of the community. But, you know, if I couldn't possibly do everything I'm asked to do, and if I did half of it, I would never write another book. So there's this
I love that.
Interesting thing. I think if I'd been popular as a young woman, I would have had a much easier time with people wanting things from me. But, you know, I was like hiding in libraries and reading a book a day. So,
wow. I love that. The work most central to your vision. That's such a beautiful way of putting it, which makes sense because you're a beautiful writer, so that makes sense. In Whose Story Is This? Old Conflicts, New Chapters, you talk so brilliantly about how power determines who gets to tell their story and who gets to be believed. Are there stories or people that you really wish we were hearing more of right now, beyond those that you cite in your book?
I think everybody in this room, everybody listening to this recognizes that women, people of color, non-straight, non-cisgender people have not been sufficiently allowed to take center stage, to tell the story, to determine what matters, to set the priorities. And that's changing in some ways. But something I always feel, and I write about in the introduction to this book, before we get all like they were a disaster, but now we're awesome and we're so damn woke, is I feel like in next year, next decade, next century, we'll be like, oh my God, those people in the year 2019 so completely missed this, and now we see, now we include this thing we excluded. So I feel there are things we don't see yet, and we always have to recognize how finite our vision is and how much more is out there. And, you know, there are other things coming along, and we have to be grateful to the people who woke us up and who taught us to see these other things, as I've been taught so much by indigenous activists, Black Lives Matter, feminism, and, you know, a life blessedly spent among the gay men of San Francisco, and, you know, et cetera. And then drag queens, so,
amazing.
And the dykes.
Have there been moments, are there things that you've written that you look back on and that you feel, gosh, I had a blind spot here, or you know, are there things that you feel you wish that retroactively or in retrospect you could go back and add more context to?
And it's interesting because there are a bunch of things, including my first book, which was about the visual artists who are part of beat culture, where I feel like I kind of surfed a specific layer of the culture, and you go deeper. You know, I didn't have the equipment to go after the massive misogyny of that era, although some of it, as I was talking to people of that generation, was being targeted at me. The memoir I have coming out, that's in your lap, you know, takes care of the beats very thoroughly, as people will presently see.
So you revisited.
Oh, yeah. So I feel like there were things I understood better and that were clearer, you know, and I don't feel like any of those things is a misrepresentation, but it often feels like I both have space to say things I might not have earlier, and that it's really kind of when you tell a story, you decide which layer you're going, and that I've been spending a lot of time the last decade on the feminist layers, the gender politics and things, which I was gentler about in some of those earlier books.
Interesting. Of those 20 books that I are part of this anthology, is there one particular one that stands out to you as the one that you're the most proud of, or that you feel, if you know, impossible? It's like choosing children. I know.
And it's really, and they did different things. Like my book, Hope in the Dark, I wrote in the bleak era after the bombing in Iraq started, and it was written to encourage people. A word a writer friend of mine reminded me doesn't mean to, you know, pat people on the head. It means literally to instill courage. And, you know, and it played a role in people's own political lives that was really important to me. My book, A Field Guide to Getting Lost, is a much more introspective personal book that has also been meaningful to people, and a lot of artists have made art in response to it and stuff. So there's that. Then You know, I love the swath, Men Explain Things has cut through the universe. And, you know, and right now the book I'm writing after the memoir comes out, that I'm working on now, that'll be out possibly in 2021, maybe in 2022. I'm just like madly in love with. But they all have a function and they all represented something. All of them are something I really wanted to say and I really wanted people to think about. So there's a couple that I think didn't turn out great, but there's a lot, you know.
I strongly disagree, but
you just haven't read those ones yet.
Okay. I chose Whose Story Is This? Old Conflicts and New Chapters as the book for my book club, Our Shed Shelf, along with your take on Cinderella. The bit that I loved so much, well, you talk about this across your work, really. You quote George Orwell in The Prevention of Literature, where he writes, "Totalitarianism demands, in fact, the continuous alteration of the past, and in the long run probably demands a disbelief in the very existence of truth." It seems that we've crossed over into this truthless world that Orwell foretold. Do you see a way back?
I don't know where we go from here, but I have to say that Orwell's sentence could have described the impeachment hearings this morning for those of you who are listening to them. There was actually a moment where one of those Republicans, and there's a great old saying, like, if the facts are on your side, argue the facts. If the law's on your side, argue the law. And if the facts and the law aren't on your side, pound the table with a shoe. And this Republican said indignantly, "Are you saying the president is lying?" Which is kind of like saying, "Are you saying water is wet?" Which it generally is. And, you know, and it was really interesting seeing how they're able to use the conventionalities where you can't say he's the biggest goddamn liar, you know, ever to. So, but it's interesting that they've basically, their defense of Trump is based on the ability to make inconvenient facts go away and to write any story they want and to really kind of divorce themselves from the, you know, Enlightenment project of kind of science and fact and evidence-based reality. I feel like it's a huge struggle. I don't prophesy much. I don't know where we go from here, but I feel as a writer who was trained as a journalist, but that, you know, as a storyteller, constantly adhering to the accuracy and precision and factuality as values is really important. And also something that all of us do in our lives. Do we share a story that we haven't verified? Do we repeat unsubstantiated stuff? Do we check stuff out? Do we know, you know, beyond the kind of soundbite who the candidates are we're supposed to vote for? And there's a quality of thoughtfulness. I don't know where we go from here. My happiest times, I think that social media and, you know, personal devices, smartphones, are to our generation, are to our era what crack was to the 1980s, something where the next